Hello there, browsers of the internet. dankydrank here, and today we are going to be learning about variables in Java. Stay tuned. Alrighty, so here we are. We have these files which were created in the last video about methods. If you haven't seen that, they're all in a giant playlist. Well, not that giant yet. This is only, the third episode now? So, basically what you are going to want to do, before we even start here, I'm not sure if I did this in the past video, but I know I want to do it now. Go to one of your Java files, right-click on it, go to Open With, and choose the default program. You may have to browse for a default program and select Dr. Java. If you're on Mac, do right-click, hit Get Info. Down at the bottom, you'll be able to select the default program. It's just handy so that when you double-click on this, it automatically opens up in Dr. Java. Now that we're here from last episode, we wrote this hello world method, which prints out hello world and then calls this method here and aliens, and which then calls this method here in the second class called andMars, and we created a main method that called hello world, which in turn printed out hello world and aliens and Mars. So today we are going to be learning about variables and their uses. And so let me go over what variables are, and then in the next episode you'll see how they actually become more useful when we learn about we're going to be learning about loops and their uses as well. So the for loop, the while loop, which unless you know what you're doing, none of that makes any sense to you, but promise it will make sense in the future. So I'm going to go ahead and remove this here. If you want to see this code right here that is currently in front of me, just the testing class, it is going to be located in a pastebin link in the description of this video. So that's the deal, that's what's going on, and we are going to begin with creating variables. So here we go. We are going to write, let me remove this first. Let's go ahead and explain what variables are. So variables are similar to math class, however, they don't have the same uses in Java. So in math class, variables are unknown and changing values which are usually solved for. And in Java, variables are known and changing objects which are usually used to solve problems and loop through segments of code. So what this means is in math class we have variables, so like say x equals, I don't know, x minus 3. Okay, so what you do, that would actually not even work. X equals negative x minus 3. There we go. So we add x to the other side, you get 2x. 2x equals 3, or negative 3. So then you divide by 2, and you get x equals negative 3 halves. In Java, it's not really the same as that we are actually creating variables. And every time a variable's value changes, it's because we, or a, I guess, user of our program, did something that called part of your code which changed the variable's value. Now, some of you might be thinking, oh, that's not useful, oh, yada, yada, yada. Well, it's very useful, and I'm going to show you why right now. But it's going to become even more useful in the next video about looping. So let's say I wanted to generate a random number. So I'm going to go ahead and type in here. I'm going to put my main method at the top of my class, actually, so we can see it in the future very easily. There we go. I'm going to remove a couple of these lines. There we go, that's gone. Alright, so let's create a new method that will generate a random number. So follow after me, and then actually, before we even start here, there are a few things you need to know. Primitive data types. These are the main variables of Java. So, what are primitive data types? Well, there are 3 that you are going to need to know right now, and possibly down the line in some more complicated programs we'll be using some of the others. But the 3 you need to know are int, double, and boolean. So, int, what do you think that stores? This is a data type in which you can create a variable, which is a particular instance of that data type, and store an integer value. So it stores an integer value from, and the maximum is, let me print that out. That's the maximum value, so let me copy this in here. From that to the minimum value of integer, which is, oops, sorry, I just bumped my microphone. Hopefully that wasn't too bad. Keyboard is kind of right behind it, to that. So those are what ints can store. Hopefully that makes some sense, and I'll explain how you create ints and assign values to them. But next we have double. Double stores a number with a decimal from, let's see here, double dot max value. You don't need to worry about this. This is ridiculous. I'm going to put it in here anyways just for the heck of it, but that's not necessary for you to ever need to know. Int is more useful, but yeah, let's go ahead and just put this in here for those of you that must know. And so it stores a number with a decimal, so let's do some examples for each of these. Let's see here. 1, 5, negative 200, negative 5,000, positive 9,843, all the way up to this number and all the way down to this number. So that's what we can store in ints. In doubles, we can store things such as, let me write this in here. All right, we can store things as 0.0, 5.7, oops, let's do maybe 987,000.265. Let's do, I don't know, what else can we do? Negative 25,076. 25,076.522. And so, yeah, those are some good examples there. And booleans can store 2 things. Booleans can store true they can either store true or, big shocker here, false. So these are useful when you want to see if there's a condition that would lead you to do something different in your program. So say you wanted to print out hello world, but only if there was some condition somewhere that, so like a user had said hello, I don't know, for example. If the user had typed in hello to like whatever program you made, then you wanted to print out hello world. That would be an example of a Boolean. Doubles, I'm going to get into those in actually just a minute here, but I'm not going to go in super big depth. But today we're mainly going to be focusing on int and Boolean, and maybe somewhere down the line I'll get more into doubles, but that is not as much for this episode as it is for future episodes. As long as you know what it is now, you'll be fine when I use the terminology. So, we're going to write a method that will generate a random number. So we're going to, right after me, write public static int, yes, int, not void. We're going to be writing random number, and just type our empty parentheses in there, hit return, open brace, close brace, and go in between them as usual. But this is also a method, and you notice I didn't say void here. I wonder what makes that work. Well, you see, the thing is, when I call this AndAliens method, it is not equivalent to anything. When I call the random number method, this method, every time it's called, it returns a value. So every time it's called, it would have a different value. But right now, we haven't given it a value yet. So what you're doing, of course, if we're going to be generating a random number, and we want that number to be an int, as defined here, we're going to write, or first need to create a new integer. So to create a new primitive, you must do two things. Number one, you must declare the variable. So what is that going to look like? We're going to type data type. Of course, starting with a lowercase letter. They all are all lowercase. They're all one word, even the ones that aren't mentioned here. Data type, variable name, and semicolon, because that's a statement. We're doing something as opposed to checking for a condition or creating a method or a class file. And then number two, he said number two, this is initialization, and that is where we're going to say variable name equals some value of data type. So, for example, we could do int myInt equals, or int myInt semicolon, myInt equals 12, or double my double equals 5, or boolean my boolean equals true. Those are just examples. Yeah, when you're initializing a boolean, you can either say true or false here. So random number, let's get back to this. For a random number, we are going to want to create an int. So, as mentioned up here, basically when we're declaring a variable, we are saying that a placeholder for a number or an int or whatever a value of data type, we're creating a placeholder for that to exist. So, that's what we're doing with declaration. Initialization is when we actually create the variable. So up until this point here, nothing is actually in myInt. And if we go down into the compiler here, oops, just reset it. There we go. So say I wanted to type int I equals, or int I equals 10, semicolon. That would work if I tried to print I out, which is something else you can do with ints. But say I were to create int n and then try and print n out, that would basically, when you create something that's empty, it just automatically initializes it to 0. But later down the line, when we start working with objects, it's going to have a null value, which will actually break your program. That's not good. So let's see here. We are going to need to create an int, and we're going to call this rand_num. And what do we want rand_num to equal? You guys don't know this yet, and it's oh great, my phone's ringing. Guys, I'll be back in a second. I hate telemarketers with every single ounce of my heart. Okay, I'm glad I have that out of the way now. So we have random number, and to create a random number, generate one, you need to type something like this: math. Oh my goodness. Telemarketers, I swear I will kill you. Let me go turn off my answering machine. Oh my goodness. Okay, that's done. They were leaving a message. Telemarketers who actually leave messages. And we are on the do not call list, but they still call. So, foreign countries, you know, that's how it is. So, math.random, surprise there. And in the parentheses, we are going to type nothing. Yeah, that's right, nothing. And what this does is it generates a random double between 0 and 1. Well, that's an issue because we can't put doubles in ints. And we also want a nice whole big number. So what we need to do is multiply it by the number of values we want possible. So we want 10 values. And let's go ahead and close this off with some parentheses so it's its own statement like in math class. Now we have a double that is somewhere around 10, somewhere around there. Could be even lower, could be higher, never know. Could be anywhere from 5 to 10 if it was 1 that was generated. And again, we have the issue, it's not an int right now. Well, basically there's a thing called casting in Java, which basically you create or do a parenthesis and write int for now. And what this actually does is it converts this double value. This right here is a double at the moment. If you multiply a double by an int, you get a double. So this is a double. We want it to become an int. And what this does is, let's say you had 8.999999999. If you converted this to an int, let me demonstrate here. So I'll put parentheses around this, and we'll convert it to an int. What do you think that's going to be? 8. It just truncates the decimal. So, when I said int here, this is going to be anywhere from 9 to 0, because remember it generated from 0 to 10. So, not including 0, but it's going to truncate if it's less than 1. So, but if I want it to be 1 to 10, I need to add 1. And finally, right now this does something, but we don't have any way of storing it, right? So we need to say randnum, and equals in Java actually is gets the value of. That's the best way to put it. Random num gets the value of math.random times 10, which generates a random double from 0 or 0.000000 somewhere down the line 1 up into 0.99999 with a vinculum forever, and then multiplies that by 10. So that would be anywhere from 9.9999999 with a vinculum to 0.00 with a vinculum and 1 somewhere way down there. And adds 1 to it, so now we're from 1 to 10. Converts it to an int, and then random number gets that value. So this, on the right side of the equal sign, is evaluated and then stored in random number, or random. And lastly, since this method actually has a value, or gets basically, you can have other variables that get the value of this method, we need to return randnum. Like that. And there we go. And we could even remove this +1 and just say randnum equals randnum +1. I'm keeping it not confusing for now. There are other things, say I wanted to do that another way. If I wanted to do +1, I could do plus equals 1, which does random. It's basically the same thing as randnum equals randnum +1. Or if you're just adding 1, you can do randnum ++, which adds 1 to randnum. So, I like to do randnum equals randnum +1 for this video, but usually I just use randnum ++ if I'm going to add 1 to it. Then we return it, but this can all be done on one line, and that is if we do not define an int. Let me just show you that this works first. So, in here in the print line, we're going to print random number first, just for the heck of it, and we're calling the method in here. So we're going to actually call the method with the parentheses, and then hit run here, and it generates a random number. You'll see it'll be different every time that we call it. And this can all be done on one line if we just typed in return math, or we'll do int math dot random times 10 plus 1. There we go. We have our number from 1 to 10 generated on one line. Awesome. So, guys, that is it for variables for now. They're going to be much more useful in future videos. This video is getting really long. I'm stopping now, I promise. Thank you. Goodbye. Have a lovely day. This file's on Pastebin in the description. Follow me on Twitter. Dankydrank, or my username on Twitter is dankydrank. Again, link in the description. Guys, have a wonderful day. See ya.